I'll convert you.
Can't do it.
I'm with you. I respect your.
I want them to win, but
I respect your loyalty.
all right, everybody's good? Ready to go? All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. In a moment, you're going to hear from Mayor de Blasio, then you hear from Chief of Crime Control Strategies, Lori Pollack. Will go over our March crime figures. And then Chief Monahan will talk about, if you recall, last month we had an increase in 4 commands in crime, and we put some additional resources in there, and Terry will talk about that. First, I want to thank our host here at the Christian Cultural Center, Senior Pastor Reverend A.R. Bernard, and his son, Pastor Jamal Bernard. Thank you for having us here. And thanks for welcoming us here. Actually, again, we were just here on February 28th, too, where we had one of our community-based meetings. That's one in a series of meetings that I spoke about at the beginning of the year in precincts where the crime rate is double the citywide average. We've had 5 so far. We had one in the 7.5, we had one in the 7.3, the 2.5, the 4.0, and the 4.2, and we're doing another one Wednesday night. These meetings have been productive, got a lot of good insights, a lot of good ideas moving forward. It's a long-term strategy, but as we do anything in NYPD, we do it in close partnership with everyone who lives and works here to make sure their streets are just as safe as all the other streets in New York City. And today, while the day in and day out hard work of the men and women of the NYPD continue to drive citywide crime down, it's going to take the full partnership of everyone to push us past the already record lows. So we still have a lot of work ahead of us. And again, that we means not just the NYPD, it means every city agency, our law enforcement partners at the local, state, and federal levels, and of course, all 8.6 million people who live in this great city. We all have a stake in our public safety. The bottom line is this: everyone must listen and take action together. That's how we're going to ensure the quality of life on every block in every neighborhood is improved, and most importantly, that it is sustained. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And Commissioner, again, my admiration and appreciation to you and all the men and women of the NYPD. Another strong month. And as you said, the bigger trend here, unmistakable, continued progress, driving down crime in this city. But that said, we are always watching for specific things we need to do better. And we certainly saw at the early part of this year, we saw some challenges that had to be taken very seriously. We saw an uptick in homicides. We've got more work to do, but it's good to see that that number has started to come down in a real way and that real progress is being made. And that is a testament to what the NYPD does so well, which is to make really fast adjustments, to move our officers where they are needed most, to change up on strategies to make sure that we have the right approach for each situation, and that's been the NYPD way. I also want to commend you, Commissioner, and your whole team for the focus on 6 precincts that have particular challenges that we really want to address fundamentally. And I think this is an example of the continued growth of the strategies the NYPD is employing as overall crime has gone down. The ability to pinpoint where we have persistent problems that we want to make a real structural impact on. That's what's going on in these 6 precincts. I think this is a really smart strategy you'll see play out over the course of this year. And it's part of why we're here in East New York to say to people in this community and all 6 precincts that we're not going to stop until we make more fundamental changes and make people safer and make sure they feel safer at the same time. Thank you, in addition to our First Deputy Commissioner, Ben Tucker, our Chief of Department, Terry Monahan, all the leadership of the NYPD, and a special thanks to our host, Pastor Jamal Bernard. Thank you so much to you, to your family, to everyone at the Christian Cultural Center, one of the great faith institutions in this city, and thank you for all the partnership that we've had over the years, and thank you for the close work you're doing with the NYPD to help keep the community safe. It's very much appreciated. So, I will keep saying it, NYPD never rests on its laurels. This is part of why it's such an extraordinary organization, and it also continues to beat its own record. So once again, NYPD has beaten its own record. Overall, citywide crime is down 7.3% year-to-date compared to the same point last year. And that is, again, part of why we can now focus more energy, more resources on the 6 precincts that we think deserve special attention. That's the 2.5, 4.0, 4.1, 4.2, 7.3, and 7.5. Commissioner and I will be visiting each of these six precincts together in the course of the year. And as you heard from the commissioner, there's a real focus on listening to the community, working with the community, inviting the community in. I have to tell you, Commissioner, I've talked to a lot of people who've been a part of those meetings. They really appreciate that dialogue, and they see it as something that's a real improvement to have that kind of deeper strategic dialogue between the NYPD and communities. It fits the vision of neighborhood policing that we have seen is so productive. So we're going to continue with this kind of strategy to deepen it, neighborhood policing, precision policing, the things that are working, and again, particular focus on these six precincts. And the folks who live in the six precincts, I want them to know very personally, as your mayor, and I know this is true of our commissioner as well, we are focused on improving the quality of your lives. We're focused on making your lives safer, your family's lives safer. And we know that we have the tools in this great department to make sure that happens. Let me just say a few words in Spanish. Año tras año, el NYPD sigue reduciendo el crimen a niveles históricamente bajos. Hemos tenido un aumento en homicidios al empezar este año, pero el NYPD se ha enfocado en los lugares con más problemas y ya estamos viendo resultados. Vamos a seguir luchando cada día hasta que resolvamos estos problemas. With that, I want to turn to our Chief of Crime Control Strategies, Lori Pollock.
Good afternoon. As the mayor said, in March, we saw decreases in all 7 major crimes. We have new all-time lows for March in murder, robbery, burglary, GLA, and total index crime. The robbery record is a record for any month in the CompStat era. Our murders year-to-date show an increase of 9, 69 versus 60. But as I said last month when we were showing an increase in murders, that there are month-to-month fluctuations, not necessarily indicative of a trend. With that being said, the March murder number set a new low for any March with 16 versus 22. When we're talking about murders, it's never good news, but here are some facts about March murders. 38% of March murder incidents are gang-related, and 70% of our March murder victims were killed by firearms. Our March shootings saw an increase of 56 versus 46, an increase of 10, and just over 46% of the city's March shootings occurred in Brooklyn. 85%, or 22, occurred in Brooklyn North, and 55% of Brooklyn North shootings are gang-related. If we drill down even further, we see that the 7-5 precinct, where we are now, for March, recorded 7 shootings versus 1 last March. And along with the 7-7, 7-9, and 8-1, those 4 commands account for the 19 of 21 shootings in Brooklyn North in March. Additional officers have been assigned to Brooklyn North since the beginning of the year, and we have seen a significant increase in gun arrests. Notably, year-to-date, we have seen an increase of 42 gun arrests in the 7-5 precinct, and we have seen an increase of 32 gun arrests in the 8-1. And overall, in Brooklyn North, we have seen an increase of 70 gun arrests year-to-date, 261 versus 191. And we believe our discussions and partnership with the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office will lead to improvements in prosecutions this year. The rape number has been reduced for the first time in over a year, 154 versus 160. What we have seen this month is an increase in same-year reporting, especially in the domestic rape category, which accounts for almost 50% of our March rape investigations. We have seen a slight reduction in reports coming in for occurrences that happened in prior years, and we are cautiously optimistic as it is too soon to tell what the reduction in the rape number means. I would like to reemphasize that the last time we saw reductions in all 7 crime categories was in August 2017. This is the best first quarter or the best start of any year in the CompStat era. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let me go into, I know last month we spoke about 4 commands that we were going to be targeting for enforcement and moving personnel in. Start with the Bronx in the 4-3 precinct. During the month of March, that was our best result. No shootings and no homicides in the 4-3 precinct, and they were down in overall crime 18.6%. In the 3-4 precinct, we had 1 shooting, that was a homicide, but total crime was down 27% in the 3-4. In the 113 precinct, we had 3 shootings compared to 1. We had no homicides in the 113. Total crime down 27% in the 113. Our biggest issue came in, again, in Brooklyn North in the 7-9 precinct. 7-9 precinct had 5 shootings during the month of March and 2 homicides during that month. When we look at Brooklyn, specifically the 7-9 and the surrounding commands, as Chief Pollack said, 46% of all shootings that happened in the city in the month of March occurred in the borough of Brooklyn. 39% of those shootings, of all shootings in the city, happened within Brooklyn North. Very concentrated violence within this area. When we look at Brooklyn North during the month, they were up 86% in the amount of gun arrests that they made within this borough. We spoke last month with Eric Gonzalez, the Brooklyn DA, hoping to get increased prosecutions. It's worked very well for the initial stages of the prosecutions. The guns that we are making the arrest on, they are being prosecuted and they are being indicted. What we're trying to look at is what happens after this indictment. And we had Brooklyn North in for a ComStat last week, and it was quite telling. You know, we talk about precision policing and the same individuals associated with violence showing up. Without giving names, just a couple of incidences. We had one individual who came up at the ComStat. He was arrested back in April last year in the Bronx and indicted for possession of a gun. He was out on bail. He gets arrested again in October, indicted for possession of a gun, out on bail. He then becomes the victim of a robbery, gang-related robbery in February. This gang-related robbery, after it occurs, there are 2 retaliatory shootings based upon him being robbed. That individual, again, on the 21st of March, is arrested in a stolen car fleeing from the police. He is still currently out on the streets of Brooklyn. Another individual arrested back in September and indicted for a shooting. He is out on bail. In February, we have him on film on the scene of a gang-related shooting, shots fired. In March, we have him on video again on the scene of a gang-related shooting where someone gets shot. And again, for a 3rd time in March, on the scene of a gang-related shooting. He is still out on the streets of Brooklyn. A 3rd individual pleads guilty to a gun in February of 18. He gets a diversionary program. Since he's in that diversionary program, we have him on film at the scene of a gang-related shooting in January of this year. We have him arrested February 19th in a stolen car, fleeing from the police in Brooklyn. He gets out RO'd immediately, and on February 21st, he's arrested again in a stolen car, fleeing from the police. He, too, is still out on the streets of Brooklyn. These are a small amount of individuals that are out on the streets. It is not a lot of people, but these are the ones that show up consistently in the violence that we're seeing. To deal with the Brooklyn violence as it's picked up, we've moved some of our resources, our SRGs from Queens. We've moved them into Brooklyn for the time being, working in our housing, our PSA 3, which covers the housing in the 7-9 and the 8-1. When we look at PSA 3 so far this year, they're up 12-3 in shooting incidences. All of the housing IRT, which is borough-based resources, are also being put in within those houses. It's a Marcy, Tompkins, Brevoort, Roosevelt. Personnel will be in there on a regular basis, along with cars coming from around the city and housing, converging within these developments to try and stem this violence. This is where we are. So hopefully that as we move forward, this is going to stem some of the violence, and if we can keep some of these people in jail, I think it'll stem it even more.
All right, thanks, Terry. So now we're going to, on topic, crime stats. Tony?
Chief, I'll pick up on what Chief Monahan just talked about. There seem to be 2 or 3 people in cases you highlighted just a moment ago who were getting into trouble with guns, getting bailed, getting into tougher situations, causing problems, being targeted, triggering possible retaliatory shootings and other incidents around that. I mean, is there a bail issue in the courts that's problematic for you, or is there anything you can do about that? Because bail seems to be an issue out of your control.
Yeah, this is what we're looking at. We're looking at dangerousness. That's an important aspect for us to look at. And I know Terry just had a meeting with the Kings County DA about 2 weeks ago to discuss items such as this. Some of it's out of the control of the DA, some of it's up to the court. but this is how we've gotten to the point where we are. This is how we've reduced crime by focusing our resources on the people and a small percentage of the population involved in that violence. And it's going to take, as I say constantly, it's more than just the NYPD. It's got to be the prosecutors, and they have to be helpful. And I think we've turned the corner in Kings County, and they understand what the mission is, and that's to keep people safe. Yep.
Particularly in the 7-9, I know you said a lot of these shootings are gang-related, but looking at the 7-9, some of these are clustered so tightly, it's almost like there was like 5 within a 5-block radius, and very close together. Can you talk at all, is this like the same kind of crews you're seeing? Is there a turf thing happening? Like, can you go into any more detail on what the context is here?
Yeah, they're gang-related shootings, and it's the same individuals that you see showing up. That's why I was mentioning these individuals. I'm not going to mention the names of the gangs and give them any publicity, but these are gang-related instances between developments for the most part, shooting at one another, and the same individuals are showing up on these scenes.
Lisa?
Could you give us an idea of some of the strategies that you used in the 7-9 and those other precincts to try to get the numbers down?
It was putting extra resources out there, pulling resources out of other commands into the commands where the violence was, getting a more visible patrol aspect out there to prevent it, getting more detective resources in there, our warrants squad specifically, to get the individuals who are currently wanted, either on warrants or on wanted for certain crimes, getting them picked up, getting them into jail.
And do you have specific numbers on what the 7-9, what the drop was?
7-9 went up in shootings. 7-9 went up from 5 to 2 in shooting incidents during the period, which is related to this violence that was just mentioned. It's crew violence between certain housing developments. So we stepped up last month, and we're putting even more resources in there. It's the 7-9, it's the 8-1, and spilling into the 7-5 precinct right now.
Dean?
You mentioned moving some SRGs from Queens and then housing officers from other boroughs into Brooklyn North. Will it be like a clear show of force where folks in those developments clearly see more cops out there? Or?
Yeah, it's not, Dean, yeah, it's not a show of force. Anytime we move any additional uniform resources from one borough or one precinct to another, we have to make sure that they're properly briefed and that there's an introduction to the community too. You know, this is, although we have an increase in violence in the 7-9, we're still going to continue with the policy of neighborhood policing and precision policing. And if we have to move resources from around the city or around the borough into the 7-9 to make life safer for the people that live there, we will.
Will folks see it?
Yeah, you will see an increased presence. Yeah, Tony, get you next, Rich.
In the press release that you just gave out, you mentioned the 6 other precincts that are being focused on for community meetings.
Yeah.
You and the mayor showing.
I can see where that could be a little confusing. So we're multitasking here. All right. We're multitasking. Believe it or not, we can do that. The 4 precincts that Terry's talking about, that's a short-term strategy. The 6 that I'm focused with on meeting with the community, that's a long-term strategy.
What are you getting from those meetings?
So we've done 5. We're going to do another one Wednesday night. We've been to the 4-0, the 2-5, the 7-3, the 4-2. I'm probably forgetting one. 7-5. Thank you, Phil. And the meetings are about 2 hours long. We have stakeholders from the community. We have NGOs, community-based organizations. We have elected officials. We have businesses. We have youth in there. And we're looking to identify what the issues are specific to those neighborhoods. Right now, a lot of it, it's things for the youth to do, specifically between that time when they get out of school and from when it's time to go back home. So we're going to try to fill that void. We're working with the NGOs to see if we can fill that gap. The NYPD's got a lot of programs. We got the Explorer program. We got the Youth Academy program. But that's not good. We're not going to be able to scale that up to fill the total need. So we're looking for this to be a community-based operation moving forward, and hopefully that'll continue to drive crime down. Rich?
So on these individuals that are getting out on bail, you said it seems like the Brooklyn DA is on board, but whose job is it to educate the judges that are apparently letting them out the door?
A judge acts individually. They don't have there is no oversight. They have their ability to make a decision on their own. So certain judges may rule one way, other judges rule another. And there is no
Yeah, I just want a friendly amendment that. I mean, there is oversight within the Office of Court Administration. We don't control the Office of Court Administration. It's state. Obviously, everything goes up to Judge DiFiore ultimately. But I think Chief Monahan's point is well taken. You know, vast majority of what you see is based on individual judge decision making. That said, you know, to reference the point the commissioner made before, I think we want to empower judges to have additional tools. One of the things I talked about in my testimony up in Albany in February was to ensure that judges have the right to take into account more than just flight risk. What's been talked about is dangerousness. There's other definitions out there as well, but to give judges tools beyond the narrow question of just flight risk. And I think that's important to get done. I think we have a good chance of getting that done by June up in Albany.
All right, off-topic police? Yeah.
Yeah, Commissioner, is there any update in the sexual assault investigation against Christoph Porzingis? His lawyer is claiming the complainant made extortion demands.
Dermot? Chief Shea will answer that.
Regarding that particular investigation, as I said yesterday, we are aware of the complaint. There is an investigation that is underway by our special victims investigators, and beyond that, I won't have anything to say. It's ongoing.
John?
Did they have an incident in Brooklyn where a police officer hit by a drone at a funeral in the 6-6?
Yeah, this just happened a little while ago in the 6-6. I don't know, Rodney or Terry, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So one of the people that was attending the service, excuse me, the drone apparently passed out of gas or whatever it is, and it landed on one of the officers' heads. So at this time, nobody's being charged. The person that was operating the drone is being looked at, but at this time, nobody's being charged for that incident.
We also had a police officer that was injured by one of the cars in the funeral procession, a possible broken ankle. Dean?
Just to clarify, so that's the officer who was injured, was he hit by a car in the procession?
But there's two things that happened. There was a drone that came out of the sky, hit a police officer, I think minor injuries, and there was a police officer that was injured by a car in the funeral procession. I'm not sure the extent, not likely, but it looks like he might have a broken ankle. Yes.
On the Vetrano verdict yesterday and some of the things that have come out during the trial, wanted to ask about how investigators went from initially suspecting two white men in the crime to suspecting someone who was black.
Yeah. Ernie, I don't know if you want to talk about that, or Dermot.
Obviously, the whole Vetrano situation is tragic. There was a conviction after trial, but there are going to be post-trial motions, there are going to be appeals, and anything that the NYPD might affect those appeals, so therefore, I don't think it's appropriate for us to comment on it.
Can you tell us anything about what controls were in place or what system was in place when the NYPD swabbed so many people for DNA?
I'm going to defer to Commissioner Hart once again.
Again, I don't want to get into any of the specifics because, as you know, anything that we say can affect post-trial motions. The case isn't over yet. The defendant has not been sentenced. There are 30 there are post-trial motions, and there'll be an appeal. So I don't think the NYPD should get into any of that.
Any other off topic? Dean, for the fifth time?
10 times for me.
Okay.
The 7-5 precinct, that horrible case that Chief Shea spoke about last week. Any update on that? Are you still looking for folks in a gang-related?
Dermot, you might as well just stay in that seat.
Yeah, Dean, there has been as I said yesterday, a significant amount of progress in that case. We have arrested and charged one individual with murder 2. We have an additional several suspects that are currently in custody and awaiting charges, and we are working very closely with the Brooklyn DA's office. I'd just like to thank first and foremost, the detectives that have been working literally around the clock since that terrible incident took place, as well as the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, who have been there with us hand in hand, tirelessly working. This was a tough incident to watch. I've watched that video and multiple videos that have come out since then. I was disgusted, quite frankly, by what I saw. The lack of regard for human life, as people are joking as somebody was chased down on the New York City street. So you can rest assured that anyone, I put out 10 pictures last week. We are making very significant progress on identifying all 10. I want to thank the public. We have received a large amount of tips from the community that from people that are equally disgusted by gang violence on the streets of Brooklyn.
Any other off topic? All right, if not, Gloria?
Sure. Has there been a change in how you're applying the 50A law? And whether or not you're going to be releasing disciplinary records?
Well, right now, as I stated in an op-ed, I guess it's about a month and a half ago, we're looking to release officer's name, the charge, the disposition, and the documentation. That's the position that we're taking, and we're working through City Hall and Albany to modify 50A, not to repeal it. Just before I stop, I didn't do this. Sorry about that, John. John Shell is the commanding officer of the 7-5 precinct. He's been here two and a half years. I just want to thank you for all the great work that you do with the community each and every day. I know you got a little increase in violence this year so far, but the work the cops do in the 7-5 is outstanding. So, and thank you for that. And thanks for being here.
And I want to add, you get a lot of compliments from elected officials and community leaders who appreciate the dialogue that you are constantly having with them. So I thank you for that.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, we're almost there. Get these ruffians out of the room. Post. Everybody get ready. All right, we'll make sure you get ready. We're waiting on you. All right. Patience is a virtue. Let them know over there. All right, how you doing back there? You good? Everyone good? Okay. You're very welcome, and let's do some off-topic. Off-topic, Marcia.
Mr. Mayor, I have a bunch of questions about congestion pricing.
All right.
Your favorite topic.
It's a good topic.
So it turns out that as we get more details about congestion pricing, it seems like the so-called circle of pain that people are going to have to, that are going to be affected seems to increase. For example, we're being told that people who have to deliver goods and services are going to increase their prices to include congestion pricing costs to people who live in Manhattan. Additionally, there's the governor and state officials are saying that people who live in the zone, who may not leave the zone but drive in the zone, they're looking at charging them a fee just for driving in the zone, as well as having Uber and Lyft cars who stay in the zone be charged a fee. So I'm wondering how you feel about that, if you signed up for that. And additionally...
Well, can we just stay there and you'll get the others? Hold on. Come on. So, one, I want to emphasize what's been decided and what has not yet been decided. Really important distinction. What has been agreed to is something I 100% support, a plan to fix the subways and buses once and for all. We needed this. And we got a better plan even than the one the governor and I presented, because I think the inclusion of the real estate taxes actually made it even more fair. It's progressive taxation. More of the burden is going to fall on the wealthiest under this plan than even what was originally discussed. So big picture, we got a plan to fix the subways. It comes with a lockbox to make sure the money is really used for the subways and buses. It comes with a clear commitment to the outer borough transit deserts. It comes with real consideration for folks with hardship. That's what I want to see. All that is in the plan. Now, you're absolutely right. There's a lot that needs to be worked out, but it has not yet been worked out, Marcia. There's going to be a process to address these very issues. But from my point of view, I'm absolutely comfortable this was the right thing to do. Now we have to look at some of those real specific issues and sort them out. But that will be a process with the MTA board, with the mobility board, to work out the specifics to determine what's fair.
Since you have an appointment on the board,
Yes.
I wonder how you feel about the fact that there's going to be these unanticipated charges.
We don't know it yet, is my point. I want to make sure we're saying the thing. They have been talked about, and we're going to have a whole process to evaluate them. It's literally, this has happened in the last 48 hours. These things are not set in stone yet. They're going to be discussed. We're going to look at the impact on people. But I'll tell you one thing, the worst thing in all worlds would have been if Albany had not acted. So thank God there is a plan. Now there's some real details to work out, but I'm satisfied this plan is a huge step in the right direction for fixing our subways.
The real question I have is this. It seems some people say that you may have given up control of some parts of the city streets to the state because
No.
according to the bill, it says that the city of New York is required to allow the use and sharing of existing red light cameras, bus lane cameras, and speed cameras for the tolling program. And people I've talked to in the state say that these could be used to charge people who just travel within the district, don't leave the central business district, and that you would be giving up control to these people.
I don't believe that's accurate.
Control of the red
Marcia, I don't agree with your statement. I know this is a shock, but I want you to fully, accurately report the truth. I disagree with what you just said. It is not accurate in my view. It's just a misreading of the bill, in my opinion. The way that we look at this is we needed to coordinate with the state on the actual implementation. And if we have cameras that can do more than one thing, of course we want to work together. That's in the taxpayer's interest. But that is a very different thing than the decisions that have to be made. We have representation on all the boards that have to make those decisions. I assure you they are going to pay attention to the concerns the public raises. I am convinced we will get to a fair outcome. But that is, to me, much less important than the fact that we got a plan to fix the subways. We got a huge amount of revenue, finally, reliable revenue to fix the subways. That's what mattered here, and we got that. But no, we have not changed the amount of control the city has. That does not change one thing from my point of view.
Are you going to try to protect the people who live in Manhattan, who drive in Manhattan, who aren't going to go outside the barricade of 60th Street to the Battery? Are you going to try to protect them from these charges?
I'm going to listen to their concerns, Marcia, but the point is we have to make these decisions in light of the overall needs of the whole city. So of course we're going to listen to their concerns. I'm not going to tell you what my final view is because we haven't even heard the proposals yet. There hasn't been public hearings. There hasn't been anything to evaluate what the meaning would be. What I know is we have to fix the subways. If we don't fix the subways, everything else in this city doesn't work. The economy doesn't work. The whole place will never be as good as it's meant to be. This finally, for the first time in a generation, we have a chance to do it right. These are real issues. I care about folks who live in Manhattan in that zone. I want to make sure they're treated fairly. But we're not going to have the answer today. We're going to have the answer after a lot of consultation and consideration of options to figure out what's fair. Okay, who else? Yes, Jill.
Mayor, on that subject, apparently there are some New Jersey politicians who aren't happy about congestion pricing, including Jersey City Mayor Steve Fulop, who had suggested that New York City residents would be exempt from the fee, which obviously isn't true, but then had also said, well, maybe we should have a commuter tax on New York City residents coming into New Jersey so that they could fund PATH or New Jersey Transit. I'm just kind of curious whether you've spoken regionally to anybody about these concerns or what you make of this.
No, I appreciate our neighbors in New Jersey, but that has not been the focal point of our discussion, obviously. This is about fixing our subways for our people. And the entire region depends on our subway system and our bus system. It's for everyone. So I would argue, I understand he has to look out for his own constituents, but I would argue if we didn't fix our subways, people in Jersey would be hurt too because the entire economy depends on our subways and it's jobs that a lot of them depend on also. So look, Jersey will make its own decisions. I'm convinced this was the right decision for the city, but also for the whole region. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, there is some speculation that, once again, congestion pricing.
Please.
That people might drive down from Westchester or elsewhere and try to take parking spaces above 60th Street. Would there be any thought in your mind to give residents priority parking there, permits? I understand that it's a big deal. But,
yeah, it's a big deal, and it's, look, it's an interesting idea that's been out there for a while. It's something we need to look at. It is a double-edged sword. There are real problems that come with those permits as well. But we're going to have to evaluate what the impact is. I think when you make a major change like this, one, you got to figure out how to implement it fairly. And we all know there won't be actual implementation till the end of next year. It's going to take that long to get the apparatus up and running. So we have time to try and work through a lot of the pieces. And then with any big new idea, I mean, this is the first time congestion pricing is being applied in the United States of America. This is a big moment. So you then try and come up with the very best plan, the fairest, the most balanced, and you put it into action, and you watch how it works. And I'd say for the first year or two, we're going to see, are we getting unintended consequences? Are we getting problems we didn't anticipate that we have to make adjustments for? And you can make those adjustments. So I'm comfortable that with a whole, year and a half or more to prepare, we'll be able to figure a decent amount of these things out pretty well in advance. But I tell you, and you heard me say it a lot of times, what scared me to death was if this vote didn't get off by April 1st, I was worried we'd never see a plan to fix the MTA. So I'm just trying to look at the big picture here. This was a totally decisive moment for the people in New York City and for all strap hangers, and it actually worked. Albany actually came up with a smart plan and a responsible plan, and that's the big story here. Who else? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. What's the holdup with the $450 million in NYCHA funds that the state hasn't released yet?
Well, please ask the state. We would like to see that money released, and I'm hopeful because, you think about all the things that are valid concerns. Was there agreement with the federal government? Check, that's done. Is a federal monitor in place? Check, done. Is there a plan to revitalize NYCHA on a huge scale? Yes, in place. So I think it's time for that money to be released, but those conversations will pick up now. Again, everyone wanted to get through the budget, obviously, in Albany. We're certainly looking forward to continuing that conversation now. Specifics? No, I'm waiting to hear. Please.
More on NYCHA. Can you address the delay? And she's in the next.
Sure. Yeah, we want to get it right. It's a big, big decision. And when I say we, I'm happy to say this. Common front, common cause between HUD in Washington, U.S. Attorney's Office here in New York, and our administration. We all are trying to achieve the same outcome. It's been a very cooperative, collaborative process. There's daily conversations on this process. Dozens of candidates have been looked at. And we saw some more candidates by acclamation, by agreement, that we wanted to take a look at. So everyone agreed that we wanted to take a little more time because this is a, you know, I say it as a kind of thumbnail sketch. I think it's true. It's like hiring a mayor for a city of 400,000 people. And it's 400,000 people in NYCHA who really are going to depend on that new chair. We all want to make this decision carefully and get it right.
Is there any updated timeline on when you think that could happen?
It will be over the next few weeks. Who else? Yes.
Yeah, Mayor, the number of take-home vehicles has increased 36% since you became mayor. I think over 3,400 employees now getting the perk. How do you respond to criticism that the cuts you've proposed, these take-home vehicles, only really makes a dent in this problem?
I think now with the, my new favorite phrase, telematics, with the ability to track each vehicle and look at the usage, we're going to be reassessing the whole situation with take-home vehicles. So, you know, as we talked about the other day, the main reason the number of vehicles went up was 2,000 more officers on patrol, more ambulances, a lot of things that people really wanted to see and that were important. More, obviously, our counterterrorism efforts stepped up. But now that we have a system for literally tracking every single vehicle and analyzing its usage, we know we're going to reduce the fleet by 1,000 to start. But then we're looking to go farther, including where we don't think there's a need for a take-home vehicle. We're going to reverse that. Who hasn't gone? Gloria.
We have two questions. First, do you want to expand for us on your travel this weekend?
Yes. I'm traveling this weekend.
What are some of your plans?
I'm going to Boston for a fundraising event for my PAC, and then going to Las Vegas for the same kind of thing you've seen in some other states, meetings with progressive leaders, labor leaders, Democratic leaders, speaking engagements before Democratic and progressive audiences, same thing you've seen in some of the other states.
So are we getting any closer to your decision since you're traveling?
We are wonderfully stable in saying sooner rather than later, and when we know, we will tell you.
Okay, my next question is about the city council's decision to kick Councilman Yeager
Yes.
off the immigration committee. I know you spoke a little bit about this last night, but is there any concern at all that the council might be going a step too far in how they police speech and the punishment that some of these members are facing for saying things that are considered offensive?
I think we've seen a couple of cases where I think the council handled it exactly the right way. I hope we're not going to see more. You know, I think it's, I'm thinking back, having been a council member and years of watching the council, these are pretty rare instances, I would argue. So I'd like to believe we've seen the last of them for a while.
And no concern that, you know, we're getting into free speech territory here and people's right to express their views and...
Well, people always have a right to express their views, but I think when it comes to positions of leadership and specific assignments, which is what the council leadership, you know, has a right to make decisions on, and you certainly see this in Washington as well, for example. It's, if someone expresses a view that is judged to be one of intolerance, it's perfectly appropriate to make decisions on whether they belong in certain positions within the council based on that. I don't see a problem with that. I hope, again, that we're not going to have to grapple with this anymore because people will learn the lesson that this kind of speech is not appropriate.
My last one is the Board of Elections is testing out a new machine today, a new voting machine that would help with early voting, and we've done a lot of reporting on this. Mike Ryan, sitting on the board of this company, he's been flown around the country on their behalf. My understanding is that those machines have not yet been approved by the state. So just want to get your reaction to that, if you think the board should be using these machines with that clear conflict of...
Look, I don't know the details, but I do know the state needs to look at this matter very closely. Obviously, I wish the Board of Elections were under our direct administration. I would, if we had control of the Board of Elections, I would instantly change pretty much everything they do and professionalize them and treat them like any other city agency with modern professional management. I wish the state would take action. There is legislation to, at least even within the current structure, professionalize the leadership and the management of the Board of Elections. I wish they would do that. But at least on this particular matter, the state needs to exercise its oversight and look at this before it's approved and decide if it's appropriate. Who has not gone? Anyone not gone? Jeff.
Mayor, most of your political trips have been on the weekends. I know you not a fan of hypothetical questions, but have you given any thought to, if you were to run for president, how you would travel? Would it just remain only on the weekends, or how would you continue to run the city and still travel on the country?
I'm not a fan of hypothetical questions, and I thank you for noticing, but I want to speak to the underlying point, which is obviously a very, very important one and fair one. The decisions I make have to, in my view, be consistent with my focus on the needs of the people of this city. That is a fundamental piece of the decision. And I've said to you that I am concerned that I think right now our federal government is not helping New York City in a whole host of ways, and we're being hurt all the time by bad policies in Washington. There's no infrastructure plan. That we're one of the places would benefit the most from an infrastructure plan. We're fighting to save the health care we have when Washington should be working every day to increase availability of mental health and physical health care. I mean, you go down the list. So real changes are needed in our country. If they don't happen, New York City continues to suffer. I'm also thinking all the time about continuing to deepen all the things we've put in place here in the city so that we serve people. And I hope you see today that on the report we gave earlier on the crime statistics, thank God crime continues to go down, and it's because of strategies we put in place over the last years. It's because we have 2,000 more officers on patrol. These are seeds we planted years ago that are coming to fruition. So I'm going to consider all of these elements before making a decision. As I said, it's a very personal decision, ultimately a family decision. But I care deeply, of course, to make sure that the people of this city are being well served.
Mr. Mayor?
Who has not gone? Yes.
On congestion pricing, now that congestion pricing has passed, the regional plan thinks there will be enough reduction in traffic, reduction in traffic that you won't need fully to take apart the BQE and close the promenade for construction. Your reaction?
I think we don't know if that's true to begin with. We just don't know what the reduction in traffic will be. I think it stands to reason there will be some reduction in traffic. We hope it's a big reduction in traffic. We don't know that yet. We do know that the BQE, as it is now, the triple cantilever, is really in a situation where it's got to be repaired soon. That said, we're sorting out right now what our options might be. We certainly want to look at a range of options. We're listening to the community concern. But I would just be careful that I appreciate the RPA, but I would say we just don't know yet what the traffic reduction will be, and we got to take the BQE situation seriously. We cannot minimize the need to address it. Anyone who's not gone? Okay, go ahead.
Two council members today, Brad Lanner and Margaret Chan, announced that they want to introduce legislation instituting the 5-cent fee on paper bags, which is obviously optional. What do you think about that? Is that something they should?
I haven't seen the legislation, so I want to reserve judgment on the specifics, but on the broad stroke, I think it's the right direction because it's a huge victory for the environment and for fighting global warming that the biggest city in America is and the state of New York are banning plastic bags. And that's hugely important because plastic made out of petroleum products is part of the problem. So that's a big step forward. But we have to remember that paper bags require a lot of energy to be produced, and then in most cases they're thrown away, they're not recycled. That's a problem too. So we have to get away from paper bags as quickly as possible. I think this may be one of the ways to do it. But we have to add to the equation, and has not been fully addressed yet, is how to make sure people have access to reusable bags, including folks who don't have a lot of resources. That's part of what I want to discuss with the council before coming to a final judgment on this, because I think if we've got to reestablish that culture of people using reusable bags to really cut off from paper and plastic. Marcia.
And it's sort of congestion pricing related, but not really. So in other states, in other cities that have done congestion pricing, it's shown that 85% of the people who are affected continue to drive and 15% stay to choose other methods of transportation. So my question to you is this. Given the fact that this is supposed to be a congestion plan, a 15% reduction enough for the city, or would you have to then consider other ways to reduce congestion, like night truck deliveries,
Yep.
or limiting, for-hire vehicles, or other things yet to be discussed?
So let me say, a great question. Let me say a couple of points. One, I think congestion pricing, even though you're right, it's called congestion pricing, and I think a lot of the original motivation when it was first formulated in London was about congestion per se. Let's be honest. The number one reason to do this was to fund our subways. And that was, to me, the strategically crucial reality here. If we didn't fund our subways, we were going to end up in the worst of all worlds, where people couldn't get around, the economy get undermined, and by the way, the more people can't rely on the subways, guess what they do? They go to cars, cabs, for-hire vehicles, et cetera. So we had to fix the subways for everything else to fall into place properly. But at the same time, we have a congestion problem. I would say this. I think you're right to raise the question, how much? It's kind of like the RPA question. We don't know how much yet. If it's a 15% reduction, that's very helpful. Is it enough? Of course not. So yes, we do simultaneously have to look at things like limiting deliveries. Certainly we're looking at the question of capping for-hire vehicle numbers. All of that is going on right now, and we'll have more to say on that soon. I do think it's going to take more than one piece to really address our congestion problem. And one more thing, Marcia, it's not just a Midtown Manhattan problem. I'm from Brooklyn. Plenty of congestion in Brooklyn, plenty of congestion in parts of all 5 boroughs. So my vision is we're not just addressing congestion where it gets the most attention in Midtown Manhattan. We have to address it citywide. Anyone else? Gloria.
Mr. Mayor, it's my understanding that the president will also be in the Vegas area this weekend.
Yeah, we're going to be gambling together. How did you find out? How did you find out? I did not know that, actually.
Are you now going to cancel your trip?
No. No, it's a big state. There's room for more than one. Okay.
In February, you had said that you wanted a solution to the e-bike problem, and last week, I believe it was, Gotham reported that e-bike users were still being ticketed by the NYPD individually, not for businesses.
Right.
That was the policy memo. I'm curious, now that e-bike language is not in the state budget, what's your thoughts on moving forward with this?
So a couple of things. One, a lot got done in the budget, but obviously a huge number of things are going to be put into the rest of the legislative session. That's not so surprising. This is one of the things that needs to be addressed in the legislative session, and we'll be working with the legislature on it. We can't address the e-bike issue if they're not legalized. We have to treat them as illegal. That's the bottom line. So that's up to the state legislature to act. I do think there's a number of ideas that have come up that will help here in terms of trying to create a real speed limit for these bikes so that reduces the danger levels, helping current bike owners to modify their bikes. There's good ideas that are in the mix now, but ultimately Albany will have to act, and we'll encourage that. In the meantime, I'm sitting here with 2 rather responsible individuals. The message from the beginning has been we want to ticket the companies, not the individual bike owners. Now, as you know, sometimes the bike owner is their own company or is part of a company that is not attached, for example, to a restaurant. So there are some nuances there that we have to work through. But it's consistent with the original theme, and we're going to work, obviously, to make sure that that original vision is implemented properly. Okay? Oh, last call.
So, Mr. Mayor, back to the bags for 1 second. One of the council people said this morning that 2 cents out of the 5-cent charge for the paper bags will go to buy the reusable bags for the city. And the other thing is that a teal or a robin's egg blue shirt? And I've noticed that you don't wear cuffs. I mean, you don't wear the cufflinks.
Okay, wait. This is like the strangest segue I have ever heard in my life. I'm like, it's paper bags. Now it's teal shirt. Like, what's that? Let's break this down. Let's break this down.
I just wanted to sneak it in.
I was very impressed by the speed with which you pounced. The first point, I have not seen the bill. It just got introduced, as you heard, and I want to see the bill. But that's important. How are we going to fund the reusable bags? So if there's a way to do that within the fee, that's great, but I just haven't seen the details, so we'll come back to you on that. I think this is I don't think it's
Don't
teal.
get me involved in this.
Teal? I don't think it's teal. There's no, I don't wear those. No. This is not teal. Is that teal?
Looks green.
Greenish, but it's a nice green. It's not one of those.
Post St.
bad
Patrick's Day.
Yeah, but come on. It's just like, no, it's not blue.
I think it's blue.
It's not blue. Okay.
Don't cave on it.
Hold on. We're out of session. I'm bringing my sleeve to prove to you. Come on. Look at this. The white is not
Seafoam green.
It's drying.
No, it's not. It's
It's
seafoam.
everything.
Damn it, why did you say that? Seafoam green.
The stripes, I think it's green.
I wouldn't have, seafoam green doesn't sound right, but it is accurate.
It's like a mint.
But then if it was seafoam green, they shouldn't be wearing a blue tie, you should wear a green tie. I'm just teasing.
Everyone's a critic. Everyone's a critic. All right, controversy. Dominated this
It's like that dress, right? The purple, and that. Wasn't that a yellow or purple?
Why would I ask that question? I don't.